Well, good morning. I hope it's a great day wherever you are. It's the first Sunday in July, and if we're going to have a warm summer month, this would be it. Here's a question for you. Will your children or grandchildren be ready to join the workforce when they finish their education? Will they be able to find jobs that not only provide financial well-being, but personal satisfaction as well? I'm not sure we can provide the definitive answers, but we can begin the discussion, and it all starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Now, here's your host, Don Ryan.
Our subject this morning is education, but our guests are not educators, at least in the traditional sense. We have two people who have a long record of supporting education, but they bring their own unique perspective to the discussion. In the second half of our show, we'll be talking with Tony Rataski, the Executive Director of the Upper Peninsula Construction Council. We'll also be talking with Tony about how construction employment is going this summer. But our first guest is Stu Bradley. Stu has a long record of volunteer service and has worked to support many community projects. One of his current major interests, in fact, I think we could say passions, is education, particularly what has become known to be as career technical education. It's a subject that will have a big impact on many young people as they prepare to enter the world of work. Stu, welcome back to the Ryan Report.
It's good to be back. I was on many years ago.
Yeah, back many years ago as well. Right, you know, let's first of all tell people what this subject is. Career technical education. What does it cover? What comes under that umbrella?
Well, it's really kind of a wide spectrum. I mean, it's a lot of hands-on learning, and that's the part of it I like the best. But you're talking about healthcare, and you're talking about skilled trades, and you're talking about some business courses even. But there are probably 800 kids in Marquette-Alger counties involved in CTE right now. And it can start in high school, or actually it could start in middle school, mostly high school, and it can lead on into trade school or the university.
There was a time in Michigan and perhaps elsewhere when the direction was going more toward, let's say, typical academic learning, college prep learning, and less opportunities for kids to get into these kinds of programs. Now the pendulum seems to be kind of swinging back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are we making some progress in that regard?
We are. I don't know that we've got the pendulum in the middle quite yet, but it's come down considerably. I mean, I think if you'd asked most teachers and principals 5 years ago, what are they pushing their kids to do? It'd go to a four-year college, you know, and what's happened now, there's so many kids, even if they're allowed to get through or graduate, they're finding themselves in jobs that don't even fit what the kind of classes they were taking in college. So, and they end up with student loans of about, I think, average a little over $30,000 right now.
So how did you get so involved in this issue?
Well, it's kind of a long story. Probably a family individual that needed a different way of learning. He needed to learn something in a career. On my Air Force career, I spent 26 years in aircraft maintenance, dealing with mechanics and engineers and technicians. So, and probably 10 of those years, I was an air training command where we taught 30,000 people technical. So I guess it sort of started there. But I guess I kind of been watching kids as they're growing recently in the last 10, 15 years, and I'm concerned particularly about boys, and I'm worried about the kids maybe in the bottom half of the academic spectrum. They may be skilled in a lot of things, but they're not the kind of kids that are going to go on to become physicians or attorney. Those are the ones that I'm really focused on.
What about people who might say, well, you know, for kids to start picking out their careers in middle school or high school can be a little difficult. Is that a problem?
It is. Yeah. I think most people probably change, but one of the nice things about CTE is you get a chance. Let's say you try welding and say, whoa, that's not good. Well, you've eliminated one of the courses. Right. So I think I've had several people say most kids change 2 or 3 times by the time they're in 8th grade or something, but I think the way our society is changing, kids are going to have to learn a skill, and they're going to have to, half of them are going to have to fill a technical skill.
What are some of the things that are happening? I know you're actively involved in the Marquette-Alger area. How are we getting this message out to kids and parents?
Well, we've got a kind of a broad band of things that we're doing. Shows like this are certainly great. We have a Facebook page and a LinkedIn page. We worked very closely with the Mining Journal and did a huge spread, a 16-page long spread on 5th of February last year that included all the technical training in Marquette and Alger County at the university level and at the high school level and in apprentice programs. We're trying to direct people into the right program. In other words, the kids' interest with their abilities and if there's a job available.
And isn't that really one of the keys to make sure parents and kids understand there are choices, a lot of choices.
And I think in the past, parents always, or well, even in the future, right now, is that they want their kids to do better than they did, you know. And in the past, it was, you know, if I didn't have a college degree, I want my kids to have a college degree. But now it's the point where there's other great alternatives that maybe they only need an extra year and they get a certificate, or a 2-year program like at Northern, and they've learned a skill that'll lead them into a profession that they can work the rest of their life.
We're going to talk a little bit more with Tony Ratasky about some of the construction trade jobs, but there are others as well. Culinary arts, hospitality, healthcare, just many other possible opportunities where it's not always a 4-year degree that's required.
Yeah, most of them it's 2 years or less, really. Okay. And if they want, but the percentages, once kids start in high school in CTE and or in college, they have a higher graduation rate than the kids that are not involved in CTE.
Isn't one of the good things that's happening is that we're kind of combining the two? We're learning ways to teach some basic skills, but also some basic subjects like math and reading at the same time?
Well, math scares the heck out of an awful lot of people, and there's quite a few teachers in the Marquette Alger area that incorporate math with a technical area, like Kevin Bell over in the Negaunee school system teaches welding, and if you take 4 years of welding in Kevin Bell's class, you get a math credit because he's incorporated into the regular curriculum of welding. And now, trust me, they'll remember that forever, that math they learned, because it's a life dependency in some cases, but basically they learned the practical side of, you know, hands-on learning.
You were part of a group that went to Lansing during the governor's State of the State message and received some positive comment from the governor, your group.
Yeah, we got it.
And this related to the Technical Middle College. What's that program about?
Well, it was our 11th goal when we first started 2.5 years ago, which I never thought we could get accomplished. And of course, it wasn't just us. It was Marissa and NMU and our committee just sort of pushed things along. But basically, with the help of Eagle Mine, contributing $50,000 a year, a kid in the 10th grade makes a decision into one of 9 different career areas, technical area. There's healthcare and other technical areas. And they actually start taking classes at Northern, 1 class a semester their junior year, a couple classes a semester their senior year. They don't graduate with their class, but they go full-time year 13 to Northern, free. And if they play their cards right, they can get a 2-year degree at no cost. And that's because of the $7,500 from the state stays in the school system and actually goes to Northern, plus the $50,000 that Eagle Mine is helping with.
So this really requires a lot of cooperation between the high schools and the college to make this work.
Oh yeah, it was a huge thing. It's one of those things I never thought was going to be possible. But right now, they started last year with 11 kids. And one of the nice things about it is they get a lot of counseling along the way. We want these kids to be successful, you know, so they've got a special monitor that meets with them every week and making sure they're studying, they're doing well in their classes, and they are really outperforming their peers.
What's the biggest stumbling block to success to getting this program really moving? All of these career technical training programs.
Probably parents and grandparents and kids. Everybody kind of has a concept possibly that it isn't the state of the art and something that's maybe not as positive as some other careers. But when you walk in, you take your new 2015, I got to get my years right, Impala into the Chevy, and somebody will hook up a laptop computer to it and tell that technician exactly what's wrong with it, because we're going high technical and the jobs are there, and we need kids to get trained. And of course, the dealerships, which are partners in this whole operation too, will continue to train them once they're there. So they got a job probably for life.
And maybe that's an important point, that they may not be college degree jobs, but they still require a high degree of education and training to be successful.
Well, they got to understand some basic science principles, some basic math principles, and they've got to be able to read technical information.
Okay. Appreciate you coming in to talk with us. Any final thoughts that you want to make sure people understand before we?
Well, I would just encourage parents and kids to look at our different means of getting information out, the Facebook pages and LinkedIn, and at least get their kids to at least consider these kinds of jobs.
Okay, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll have more. We'll be back with Tony Ratasky to talk about this and some other subjects after we take this break. Our next guest this morning is Tony Ratasky. Tony is the Executive Director of the Upper Peninsula Construction Council. He's also a former member of the Marquette Board of Education and was recently appointed by Governor Snyder to serve on a new talent investment board for the state of Michigan. He has experience looking at the topic of our discussion this morning from several perspectives. Tony, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me again, Don.
First of all, tell people what the Upper Peninsula Construction Council is.
Well, the UPCC is a labor management council, and we're engaged in the construction industry here in the Upper Peninsula. But one of our big drivers is trying to get young people interested in the construction careers. We need people to come into the careers and take the place of the retiring and in the aging population of the construction worker.
And this is really a problem, isn't it?
It is, yes.
We need these people.
Yes, we do. And one of the things that we're looking at right now is how do we replace them and how do we get the word out. And working with Stu and the CTE committee and many other career fairs that we host and challenges that we host, that's a way and an opportunity to get young people to look at careers in the construction industry.
I think as we talked before in the first segment, you know, there was a time in Michigan and probably everywhere where the focus went on college preparation, and a lot of people didn't see these opportunities. But these are real jobs with real pay and good benefits as well. Yeah,
well, our apprentices start out anywhere from $14 to $16 an hour and then eventually receive benefits on top of that pay. So it works out really well. And one of the nice things about these apprenticeship programs is if you're interested in climbing the career ladder, there's plenty of opportunity for that to happen.
How does that work? If someone wants to get into one of the trades, how does the process work?
Well, in a lot of different ways, the trades will advertise. Some of them do it through Michigan Works or the local newspapers, some social media. And once a student might be interested, there's addresses and ways for him to put in his or her application. And what happens after that is there might be a little testing procedure, like an aptitude test, and then they're interviewed by a committee and selected based on their interview and aptitude test.
How important is it that kids get exposed to this while they're still in high school, at least get a feel for some of these areas of potential work?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important, even before high school. In some cases, we're looking at the middle school level and even pre-middle school level for some of our students to just at least look at the career opportunities that might be out there. So we feel it's very important to get into the high schools and promote trades or other types of hands-on careers for our students.
And it is important for those kids to understand too, isn't it, that the basic education is part of this as well. That, you know, today to be in the building trades, you have to be able to handle math, you have to be able to read, all these things are important.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that some of our students come prepared and some don't and need a little bit of extra help. And I think a lot of what happens is the students aren't aware of these career opportunities that are out there, or they think of it as maybe a fallback career, and sometimes that's not the case. That you have to bring something to the table when you come for your interview.
Tell us about the shortage. When do we see? How do we see this developing?
Well, I think across the nation there's demand for construction workers. We're seeing the construction industry as the comeback industry, so to speak. It's coming back much more rapidly than some anticipated. We looked at it here from the UP perspective, and it does look pretty good in the future, but we've been preparing for this quite a bit.
What do you do to get kids more familiar with what's going on? You have some job fairs, you have some activities.
Yeah, we host hands-on career fairs across the Upper Peninsula. We're planning one for next year right now. And what happens is the students from local high schools get to come in and participate in construction activities. They have to wear the safety gear, but it's all hands-on. They get to weld, they get to do some electrical work, some concrete finishing, and it's a lot of fun for the students.
We have some more to talk about. I'll get back on this subject and some others I want to get with you on after we take this break. Back with Tony Ratasky after we take this break. We're talking with Tony Ratasky. Tony is the Executive Director of the Upper Peninsula Construction Council. What kind of a construction season are we having, Tony?
It's really starting to become very busy. There's several infrastructure jobs that are demanding a lot of tradespersons, and some of them from the eastern UP over to the western UP. We have dam projects, we have infrastructure projects, school projects, so lots happening here in the UP, and some of the trades are experiencing shortages right now, and that's what we're looking for, is people to replace some of the shortages that we're having.
What are you able to project out several years as far as how the construction industry looks? I know your organization involves both contractors and labor.
Yes.
Obviously, this is important to them.
It absolutely is important to them. We're not able to project out too many years in advance. We can see some bigger projects coming on the horizon, and we certainly advocate for those projects. But in some cases, projects just spring up based on the economy, and that's why I think we're seeing a little bit more of a robust year this year.
Any idea how many people might be working on construction in the UP?
Well, I should know that answer. I really don't have that exactly, but there's several right now in the thousands, I would think.
Do we still have to get a lot of the work done in the winter, or not in the winter, but in the non-winter in this part of the country?
Yeah, I think some of the footings and bases and foundations are done pre-winter, but the rest of it, the construction season, runs all year long, and it's not like it once was. We work all year round here in the UP, and again, some of this stuff has to be done ahead of time, like in the fall, but other than that, we're working all winter. Last year was one of the coldest winters on record, and we had several people working outside up at the Humboldt facility, so it worked out really well for them. They had jobs all winter, but it was a chilly one.
Okay. You were appointed by Governor Snyder to a 3-year term on the state's Talent Investment Board. This is a new board. What's it about? Have you had a chance to learn about it yet?
Yeah, we're learning as we go. We had our first meeting last month, and our next meeting is in September, and that's when they're going to select committees. But I think one of the things I can say is, coming out of our first meeting, I felt really good about what we can do and what we can accomplish. We are advisory capacity to the governor in a couple different things. One of them is on the new WIOA Act, or the WIOA, which is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, that was signed and will take effect July 1 this year. And what we'll be able to do is advise the governor, and there's some changes there where they're focusing on adult education, older youth employment. So we'll be able to advise the governor, and one of the things that we're gonna do is look at a statewide talent investment opportunities. For instance, students or people that are displaced workers, more opportunities for them to go to work.
You know, one of the interesting things is unemployment is still with us, but there are jobs, employers looking for people they can't find. How do we begin to deal with that issue?
Well, and I think some of it's training. I think some of it's availability and background and education. And that's really what this Governor's Talent Investment Board will look at, is how do we get those folks into those jobs, especially if they're local jobs. You know, I think one of the things that we have to think about is folks, some of them that are going to college and some that are not going to college, are going to be our local residents. They're not leaving the area, they're sticking around. So how do we train them and put them into jobs that match them? So we want to match employers with employees.
One other issue, and we only have 1 minute left,
Okay.
if you can give us a perspective in that time, but prevailing wage is being discussed in the Michigan legislature. What is the issue, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, my thoughts are, I hope they don't repeal it. It's good for our contractors. I think people think...
First of all, tell us what it is.
Prevailing wage is a wage set in a local area that sets the prevailing or determining wage. And sometimes people like to call it the union wage. It's not that. That's a misconception, because sometimes it's set by non-union contractors in rural areas. So prevailing wage is an opportunity for people to make a wage that prevails in that local area. And right now what we're seeing is an attack on prevailing wage across the state. I think some of our contractors say it best: if they don't have prevailing wage on a job, the opportunity for outside contractors to come in, I mean out-of-state contractors to come in, is tremendous, so they won't bid on some of the jobs. So it really hurts our businesses, I think.
Okay, I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that
Yes.
subject in the days and weeks ahead. Thanks for coming in this morning. Appreciate hearing on your comments on CTE, and as well as what's happening with the UP construction season.
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
Okay, back with some other thoughts after we take this break. This morning we talked about education, a subject that's very important to the future of our children and grandchildren. There are a lot of studies today that make it pretty clear the success they'll have in finding good jobs in the future is directly related to the education and training they're receiving today. It's also pretty clear they will be competing in a global economy, and there's some pretty good evidence the U.S. is falling behind other countries in the way we educate our kids. Our discussion this morning focused mainly on one area: whether our K-12 school program should be directed toward college preparation, or should it also consider basic skills training for the non-college bound students. A college degree is a major factor in determining future earnings opportunities, but that shouldn't be the only consideration. Life is not just about work, and work is not just about compensation. As someone once said, choose a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. But there's another issue to be considered when we talk about education. That issue, in a simple phrase, our changing world. You know, when my kids graduated from high school, a tablet was a pad of paper. The telephone was attached to the wall, and the web was a spider's house. There were no computers, no internet, no texting, no Twitter, or no social media of any kind. It might be hard for some young people to believe, but people basically had to talk with each other not on Facebook, but face to face. The purpose in making this point is not to emphasize how old I am, but to get young people thinking about how much the world will change in their lifetime. Because this story isn't just about my family, there's a good chance it's pretty much the same for yours. The fact that a good part of the population remembers the day when there were no cell phones, and now they carry around in their pocket a combination phone, camera, mini computer, and video watching device, tells us just how fast and dramatically things change. I started out talking about my kids, and I guess we can take some consolation in the fact that the members of their generation, as they approach middle age, have, in varying degrees, managed to learn the skills needed to operate in this new world. They probably don't know as much about it as their teenage children, but they can hold their own. The real point of this whole discussion, however, is not about the past, but the future. As we look back and see the astounding changes over the past 20, 30, and 40 years, we need to ask, what comes next? And more importantly, how do we prepare our kids to live in that world? I guess the best thing we can do is to make sure they know it's coming, even if we don't know what it is. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Here's a special reminder about our show next week. First off, we won't be here at the regular time since we'll be preempted for special NBC coverage of the Tour de France. And because we won't be here on Sunday morning, we will be here at a special time, one time only, on Saturday evening at 7, 6 Central Time. We have a really interesting show lined up with Olympic boxing coach Al Mitchell and Michaela Mayer, who is one of the top candidates for a spot on the U.S. Olympic women's boxing team. I hope you make it a point to join us next Saturday evening. And don't forget, each week our show is also available on the internet, and you can check it out if you go to uppermichigansource.com. The latest version should appear at about noon on Mondays. And if you have some thoughts you want to share with us, our email address is theryanreport@chesstv.com. Drop us a line, let us know what you think. Thanks to Stu Bradley and Tony Rataski for joining us this morning. Good discussion about an important subject for the future of our kids. Right now, the Today Show is standing by, so enjoy the rest of your day, and please join us next Sunday morning.